what the black man and woman needs to know about the nation, about the world, about themselves. Muhammad Speaks It. To order your 12-issue subscription to Muhammad Speaks newspaper, 313-371-7033. 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie is the grand champion of all bean pies. The rich flavor and smooth texture takes this pie to a whole new level of delicious. One bite and you'll understand why people all over the country call daily to order Kareem Bean Pie. 313-371-7033. That's 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie.
This bean pie is delicious.
Muhammad Speaks presents Messenger Elijah Muhammad's Teachings by Minister Khalil Shabazz every Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. at Muhammad's Temple of Islam, 12609 East McNichols Road in Detroit.
Brothers and sisters, we rise for prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Soul Master's dear gem in which we now live. Thee alone do we serve, and thee alone seek for thine help and aid. O Allah, please guide us on the right path of those upon whom thou bestow thy favors, not on the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray after they heard thy teaching. Say he, Allah is one God. Allah is he of whom nothing is independent, but upon whom we all depend. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, there is none like him. And I bear witness that none is heard to be served, worship, or praise besides Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that true servant and last apostle. Ameen. We'd like to acknowledge the brothers and sisters that extended us the greetings of Assalamu Alaikum. We have Brother Rashid Shabazz from San Antonio. We have Brother Salim Shabazz from Atlanta. We have Brother Minister Al Mutaqwan Ali from Philly. We have Sister Hala from California. We have Captain Shabay from Georgia. And we have Sister Amaros Kuket from Iowa. I'd like to say in the name of Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, and in the name of his last and greatest messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I'd like to greet the brothers and sisters with the Nation of Islam's greeting words of peace of Assalamu Alaikum. Today we like to talk about Malcolm X, the greatest hypocrite I ever seen. And this was the November 1964 Pittsburgh Carrier. I forgot to write the exact date, but I know it was in November of 1964. Because I recently saw that this new movie, it's a little short movie. It's like a 15-minute documentary, and it's called 9 Wives. It says 9 Wives finalists in major film festival. It says story about Elijah Muhammad's mistress confronting him. So it got this sister, and I was watching because, I just watch everybody. So the brother who made the little movie, he hate the messenger. He don't like Farrakhan. So, and the thing about, and one thing that I can say about these lost founds that I do understand where they're coming from. When you listen to or have all of this history of the messenger in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, all the lectures, you can listen to the messenger's laborers meeting.
Malcolm is the victim of his own preaching. He preached for it, and so he becomes the victim of it.
You can listen to all of this stuff, and we still be talking about the FBI, the police. Now, the one thing that I could understand, if Muslims say, okay, we feel this way about Malcolm, but we're not going to tell the public. We're not going to tell the public he worthy of death. We're going to just keep that among the Muslims. We're not going to have his head rolling in the paper. We're not going to say his tongue should be cut out his mouth and delivered to the doorstep of the messenger. We just gonna say that among the FOI. We not gonna write it in the paper. We not gonna make lectures saying this. We just gonna keep this among the Muslims. So in this generation, Muslims don't keep the same energy that Muslims had back then. So it seemed like we lying for the messenger. But the messenger is the messenger of Allah. God chose the messenger. This is one thing that we got to keep in mind, and we always got to make it plain to the public. God chose the messenger. So when you fight against the messenger, you fighting against God. When the messenger taught us about Malcolm, he said Malcolm is like all other hypocrites of the past. He said he's like Cor. He said he's like Absalom. He said he's like Muslima in Irv Washington's book called The Life of the Prophet Muhammad. And he said, just like all other prophet or hypocrites of the past, Allah destroyed them. That's what the messenger taught us. Yes, sir. Never did anybody say the FBI. Never did anybody say the police. From 1964 until the messenger passed away, Malcolm was a hypocrite. Malcolm got what he deserved. Praise to Allah. And when you look at the history of the messenger, black people have forgot about Malcolm altogether. They had accepted the fact that he was a hypocrite. They accepted the fact that Muslims don't like Malcolm, and they just moved on. The messenger was so successful that, like Jesus said, ye shall know a tree by the fruit that it bears. Right. All of that slander that Malcolm accused the messenger of didn't bear no fruit. Because when you saw the messenger in 1974, he was the most successful black leader out of all black groups combined. Praise to Allah. He was reforming the black man better. He had a better educational system. He had a black economical system. He had plans to make a hospital for the black man. The white man has started to accept the messenger. The white man has started to defend the messenger. But then, when the messenger passed away, as the messenger said, he said a hypocrite is worse than the enemy devil. So then when the messenger passed away, that's when all the sympathy for Malcolm became. He was a good minister. All the good that he did for the messenger. The messenger was wrong. Malcolm was the good guy who found out that the messenger had these women. He was hurt. The messenger went hard on him. He ended up dead, and we sorry for that. We sorry for what the messenger did. The messenger did have these women, so what Farrakhan and them say. So in this generation, when lost found see Malcolm, they think he was a good guy that got the raw deal. They believe that when he was lying on the messenger, talking about these secretaries, that he was right. He was just trying to tell the truth. Now let's look at this history of Malcolm X, this hypocrite, Malcolm Look. First, we want to start with the March-April 1961 Muhammad Speaks. Because the thing about Malcolm and his history, Malcolm just wasn't a regular rank and file believer. Malcolm X was the national representative of the messenger. So not only did he believe in the teachings of the messenger, but he could articulate it. He can explain it. He could defend it. And he was one of the best, not the best, but one of the best at defending the messenger's program. Because the one thing that Malcolm used to use was himself. And that's why Malcolm don't get no slack from believers. Because the messenger taught us about prophets and messengers. He says that Allah raises up messengers from among the people, speaking the people's language, so that the people won't have an excuse. So in this 1961 Muhammad Speaks newspaper, Malcolm was at Clark University explaining to the black man the teachings of the messenger. He says, I myself, being one who was lost and dead, buried here in the rubbish of the West, in the thickest darkness of sin and ignorance, hoodwinked completely by the false teaching of the slave masters, am able to stand upright today, perpendicular on the square, with my God Allah and my own kind, able for the first time in 400 years to see and hear. Now let's stop right there. Now, Malcolm X, just like all other believers, when you accept the teachings of the messenger, you don't accept them just because the messenger over the rostrum teaching you like a preacher. You accept the teachings of the messenger because of what the messenger's teachings has done for you. Praise be to Allah. So every believer has a personal transformation experience when it comes to the teachings of the messenger. You have the kind of confirmation that you know that nobody but God could have done that for you. Yes, sir. It ain't nothing like you just stopped drinking pop or you just stopped playing the lottery. Your whole life becomes changed and different because of your acceptance of the teachings of the messenger. Praise be to Allah. Not only do you see it, but those who knew you see it. So Malcolm X is making a public declaration that I was just as deaf, dumb, and blind as any other black man, deep down in the lowest depths of the mud. But because of this man, I can for the first time stand up perpendicular on the square. He didn't just say upright. He said on the square, knowing that my God Allah, that I can see once again for the first time. Then he goes on to say, he says, I bear witness that Almighty God Allah is the finder of the lost sheep, the American Negroes, and the life giver to the dead. He, Allah, is the only savior for the 20 million so-called Negroes who were kidnapped by the white race and enslaved here in America. Also, I bear witness that Messenger Elijah Muhammad has been taught, raised by this great God of the universe, the architect of the universe, the supreme being himself, Allah. And I bear witness that Messenger Elijah Muhammad is in turn raising us from the dead today, teaching us truth, and raising us from a dead level of ignorance. So this is Malcolm X making an oath. He didn't make an oath to the messenger. We make our oath to Allah. Yes, sir. Because Allah chose the messenger. The messenger says that God speaks through me. He said he like a telephone. God speaks through him like when we pick up the telephone. We pick up the telephone and we hear the person on the other end of the phone. The person on the other end of this phone is Master Farad Muhammad. So let's go on even further than that. That was Malcolm taking his oath, letting the black man know he recognized that the messenger is the messenger of God. He recognized what the messenger's teachings done for him, and it was nobody else but God that could have did this for him. So now we go to Harvard University to listen to Malcolm X defend the teachings of the messenger. He not defending the teachings of the messenger on the sidewalk. He defending the teachings of the messenger with Harvard professors. That's a whole different kind of understanding. Because I like being a minister. But to be able to debate is a different kind of skill. Because when you ministering, all you really doing, you choose a subject, you get all the information you want to talk about that subject, and you just explain the teachings of the messenger. But when you debating, that's a whole different skill. Because you can't just take any old teaching of the messenger and just explain it. You got to counter another person's argument. So you got to take the right teaching from the messenger. Then you got to explain it to the people in such a way to get them to understand your counter to his argument. That's a different kind of understanding that all believers might not have. To be able to debate the teachings of the messenger against the top white scholars. Not just on the sidewalk arguing with people who passing by. I'm talking about people who have PhDs. People who writing theology. People who translating the Bible. You arguing with them type white people. So this is Malcolm X. At Harvard University in 1960. And the transcript of this debate is in a book called When the Word is Given by Lewis Lomax. Now, Lewis Lomax was a hater of the messenger too. He give his little commentary. Just want to make that plain. We don't agree with Lewis Lomax, but he do have the transcripts of these speeches in his book. So this is Malcolm X. He said Jesus was sent among his people at a time when God was planning to bring about a great change. He says the new dispensation preached by Jesus 2,000 years ago. Now let's stop right there. What does dispensation mean? Dispensation, according to the dictionary, it says dispensation is defined as special permission to not have to follow a rule or to not be bound by a particular code of behavior. Now, why was Jesus bringing in a new dispensation? Because when Jesus came among the Jews, their condition was different than the condition under when Moses came on the scene. Because all people don't accept the prophets because they say, hey, he ain't teaching what Moses was teaching. Moses was telling us to do this and Moses was telling us to do that. Jesus not saying that. But he said that when Jesus came on the scene, God was bringing about a major change. So Jesus brought about a different dispensation in his teachings. He was saying something different from Moses. But the religious teachers of that time rejected Jesus because they didn't accept his teachings because they say it wasn't like Moses. Now let's go on even further. He says the holy prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, came 600 years after Jesus with another dispensation. So now he's showing you about Prophet Muhammad. Because the Christians say we don't accept Prophet Muhammad because he's not teaching what Jesus taught. So Malcolm X is letting them to know Jesus came with a different dispensation and so did Muhammad. Because the condition of the Arabs was different than the condition of the Jews. Muhammad coming to a completely different people. Moses was a Muslim, Jesus was a Muslim, and Muhammad was a Muslim. They all taught Islam, but all of their conditions were different. So the form of Islam that they taught came straight from Allah for that particular people who they were sent to. What do you do to Allah? Malcolm X understood that. So Malcolm X is at Harvard University explaining this to college professors. So Malcolm X goes on. He says, now today, God has sent Mr. Elijah Muhammad among the downtrodden and oppressed so-called American Negroes. He says, therefore, the way in which Mr. Muhammad teaches us the religion of Islam and the particular kind of Islam he teaches us may appear to be different from that which is taught in the old world of Islam, but the basic principles and practices are the same. He says, you must remember the condition of the American 20 million ex-slaves is uniquely pitiful. But just as the old religious leaders in the days of Moses and Jesus refused to accept Moses and Jesus as religious reformers, today, many of the religious leaders in the old Muslim world may also refute the teachings of Mr. Elijah Muhammad, not realizing the unique condition of these 20 million ex-slaves, and by not understanding that Mr. Elijah Muhammad's teachings are divinely prescribed to rectify the miserable condition of the oppressed people here. This Malcolm, the messenger taught us. He said, Allah will cause or will make a hypocrite teach. This Malcolm X in 1960, defending the messenger against what he gonna say 3 years later. Allah gave Malcolm X a defense for himself, just like with Lewis. You can take the teachings of the messenger that Lewis used to teach back in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 50s, and use it against him today. You don't even have to come up with nothing new. All you got to do is get his old Muhammad Speaks newspaper articles. Read them straight to him from what he said. Just let him condemn himself. Like, but what about when you said this right here? Because Malcolm X, the hypocrite, he started going around telling people that he accepted true Islam. A hypocrite. This is Malcolm X in a Democratic Chronicle, October 4th, 1964, Democrat and Chronicle. It says, join true Islam in Mecca. Malcolm X renounces racism. So you don't even have to argue with Malcolm at all. All you got to do is take his exact words that he was saying because what's true is true. If I teach you that 1 + 1 is 2, you get mad at me because you mad about me silencing you because of what you said against John F. Kennedy. 1 + 1 still 2. When the messenger gave Malcolm X, as he said, that divine prescription, even when he started listening to these rumors that Wallace told him, he still had used the divine solution or the divine prescription for 12 years. That don't change because you hear some rumors. And the one thing, too, that I like to talk about, because there's so much I want to say. When you listen to Malcolm talk about these rumors, because that's what we need to talk about, too. Because Malcolm heard rumors. And since so many people today, these documentaries that they come out with, they like to say, well, Louis Farrakhan, when Malcolm told him, he already knew. Or when Captain Joseph heard, he already knew. He didn't already know. These were rumors. Joseph had heard the rumors before. Lewis had heard the rumors. When Wallace heard the rumors, Wallace didn't go to the messenger. Wallace went to the sister to show you hypocrites. Now, if your father, I had a father, loving father in my life from the day I was born to the day he died. If I heard a rumor that somebody talking about my father got children with a sister, I'm not going to the sister at all. Because I don't care what she say. I'm going to my father. I want to hear what he has to say. Because he is my father. My father's word is way more superior than his sister's word. Because he my father. But Wallace didn't do that. Wallace heard rumors. So Wallace went to the sister and asked the sister, and she told him, yeah, this your father's babies. So then he tells Malcolm. When Malcolm then went to the messenger with this, they didn't go to him as if they like, hey, we heard these rumors. They went like they want the messenger to confess. Like, we heard about these babies you got. What's happening with that? That was Malcolm. Malcolm did not believe in these rumors because you always have rumors. Rumors come and rumors go. But in Islam, when you charge a person, and that's why I love Islam, because it's freedom, justice, and equality. But when you got hypocrites like Wallace, like Malcolm, they don't want justice. So they go to the court of public opinion. And that's the one reason why we can see Malcolm X was a hypocrite. Because Islam teaches you how to handle adultery.
That's right.
It teaches you that you have to have 4 witnesses to even charge a person with adultery.
That's right.
You cannot go to the sister and ask her whether or not these the messenger's children or not. You have to have 4 witnesses before you even entertain it. But Malcolm and Wallace didn't have 4 witnesses. Malcolm mad because the messenger silenced him. He know the messenger is the messenger, but he said, if I go to the court of public opinion, I could tarnish him and people will leave him. That was Wallace's first try in destroying the Nation of Islam. He saw how weak Malcolm was. Because we always like to talk about, and I'm jumping around, because there's so much that I like to say. We always talk about Malcolm like he was the best minister that the messenger had. If you go to the Muhammad Speaks newspaper 1963, and you compare Malcolm's history with Jeremiah Shabazz's history, because the one thing that I hate about this history that we talk about now, it's like it's favorites. Any person who Farrakhan like, he make them like they was special in the Nation of Islam. Like Tynetta, for an example. Let's just talk about her. Since we always talk about brothers, let's talk about MGT. They talk about Tynetta like she was special. But if you go to the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, Tynetta wasn't nothing special about her. You read her article, wasn't nothing special about Tynetta. Then when you go to the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, compare Tynetta's history in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper with Anna Kareem. Compare her history with Marjorie Hassan. Because if you don't have nobody to compare Tynetta to, you won't really see that she was just another sister.
Right.
Nothing special about Tynetta. In fact, Tynetta was writing women in Islam first. And I don't mean no disrespect to Tynetta. Tynetta did her thing when she was doing it. But my point is when you start trying to make big eyes out these people, then we can say, okay, well, let's compare her to her. To see she was nothing but a regular sister. So Sister Marjorie Hassan started writing women in Islam in place of Sister Tynetta. And was doing a hell of a job.
That's right.
She was doing so good that she began to have her articles with the Messenger. That's how a sister. Right, and I'm talking about teaching Islam.
That's right.
In both of her articles. Showing you Tynetta was just a regular old sister. Now let's talk about Malcolm. All the Muhammad Speaks newspapers is online. Go to the 1963 Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Compare Jeremiah Shabazz with Malcolm X. In 1963, Malcolm X was going to these colleges and debating. Malcolm was living in New York with Duke Ellington, with the judge, forget his name, Duke Ellington, Langston Hughes, Adam Clayton Powell, Thurgood Marshall. That's who lived in Harlem in New York. Jeremiah down south with devils like J.W. Mott, the one who killed Emmett Till. Devils like the one who shot Meg Evans. That's who Jerry. Now, if you was comparing, because the messenger said there are no big eyes and little U's. Right. But if we compare, if we want to talk the big eye stuff with this hypocrite Malcolm, then compare Jeremiah Shabazz. In 1963, when Medgar Evers was killed, the messenger sent Jeremiah to Greenwood, Mississippi. He sent them to Jackson, Mississippi to report on James Meredith. He sent them to Birmingham to report on that church bombing. He sent them to South Carolina to report on the brother that got castrated by the Ku Klux Klan. Now, there are no big eyes and little U's. But if you had to choose, whose history would you choose? Would you choose to have to interview J.B. Stoner, or would you rather go to Harvard to debate? Would you rather go to Michigan State to debate, or would you rather go to Greenwood, Mississippi, when this brother done shot? And then the thing about Jeremiah's history. Back in the day, when the white man would kill the black man, he wouldn't hide it. He would praise it. He would celebrate it. When you interview them white people, they weren't trying to be politically correct. To hell with that nigga. We hope they would kill Martin Luther King. That's what the Ku Klux Klan would tell Jeremiah when he interviewed. We wish they would have killed that nigga Martin Luther King. That's the next nigga we want to kill. Martin Luther King. We don't care nothing about no nigga. That's what J.B. Stoner was telling him when he interviewed him. That was his history. But there are no big eyes and little U's. But when you look at the history, we praise hypocrites. And this is why the people don't understand when we talk about the messenger. The messenger is the lamb without spot or blemish. Pray due to Allah. He ain't did everything he taught us was perfect. Islam he taught us was perfect. He was perfect without spot or blemish. That's why Allah chose him. And when you fight against him, you fighting against Allah. Yes, sir. So we have Malcolm X, a hypocrite, who tried to oppose the messenger. But even when Malcolm X opposed the messenger, the fruits of the messenger still shine to the black man. Because this is a 1964, January 10th, New York Times. It's called Black Muslims Asked to Help Treat Addicts Here. Malcolm X mud washing the messenger. He telling everybody that the messenger is an immoral man. He had babies with these secretaries, these teenage secretaries. I'm trying to undo the harm that I've done. All the black people who want to follow Elijah Muhammad, he is a religious faker. But like Jesus said, he said, you will know a tree by the fruit it bears. So Harlem Hospital was seeing so many black people in New York who was following the teachings of the messenger, who was quitting narcotics and alcohol cold turkey. So the doctors in the hospital say, we've been fighting this problem for years. They say we've been overlooking these Muslims because we focused on the civil rights program or the civil rights movement. He said, we need to go and ask Elijah Muhammad, how do y'all get these black people to quit these narcotics cold turkey? So let's read what they said. It says, psychiatric social workers of Harlem Hospital who have been struggling with widespread narcotics addiction have also approached Malcolm X in the last year. Milton X. Martin, a psychiatric social worker in the mental hygiene department of Harlem Hospital, admitted yesterday that he and his colleagues had been so amazed at the number of Muslims that they encountered in the streets of Harlem who had been addicts that they decided to seek the assistance of the movement. So this shows you the messenger. Because when you look at this stuff that Malcolm was talking about, the messenger, It's only 2 places where you will find a messenger ever even talks about these women. One of those places is in the September 11th, 1964 Muhammad Speaks. He only talks about it, it's maybe 2 paragraphs. He got a whole article, but he only spends maybe 2 paragraphs to tell everybody Evelyn and Lucille was Malcolm X's girlfriends before he married Betty. He trying to take me to court to force me to say that Evelyn and Lucille's babies are I'm the father of their baby. He ain't say nothing else about that from that point all the way to 1965. The second place you will hear him talk about is in the laborers' meeting when he talked to Brother Benjamin. And that right there seals the deal for me. He said, Brother Benjamin, you know me better than anybody in here. I lived with you when I was a young man. He said, you know my moral character. He said, you saw me when I was a young man. You saw all of them women who used to be at me. And you used to see me turn them away and make them better. That's right. He said, but I didn't get no letter in the office from you. And he said, that's what you do. When he was talking to all the ministers. You see mud splashed in my eye. You don't say nothing to say, well, let me see if he get the mud out his eye himself. And if he don't get the mud out his eye himself, then maybe he deserved the mud in his eye. He said, that's what you do. He said, but you better be careful. He said, because like the Bible tells you, if they could, they would deceive the very elect. Yes, and when you look at the history of this hypocrite Malcolm Little, he deceived the very elect. Yes, sir. He deceived the very elect then, and he deceiving them now. Yes, sir. Because Muslims now got that thought, and maybe the messenger might have had these children. Muslims don't never say definitely yes or no. Maybe it could have been. I don't know. But even if he did, ain't no even if he did. He said, Benjamin, you know my moral character. The messenger had a moral character. Yes. He had a moral character in 1935 when he said, I was running up and down the East Coast. He said, I couldn't even see my wife. Running for my life. And you know my moral character, but you don't say nothing for me. And he told all of them. He said, how can I trust that you would defend me if I'm cutting? Or he said, if you don't defend me when I'm tongue lashed. He said, how can I expect for you to defend me when I'm cut and shot at? I'm the messenger of Allah. He said, everything that Master Farad Muhammad gave me, I give to you. Like he gave it to me. He said, you tested it. You tried it and you see that it's true. So the messenger said, Prophet Muhammad, and this is my favorite part. This is my favorite part because if you are a Muslim in 2022 and you think the messenger told them brothers to leave that hypocrite alone, you a fool. Messenger said Prophet Muhammad had the same problem I'm having with this hypocrite mouth. So he asked all his followers, like I'm asking you, who will go for me? He said a 16-year-old boy stood up and told him, I will go for you. He said, I cut the tongues out of the mouths of everyone who speaks a word against you. Then after I cut their tongues out their mouth, rip their intestines out by the root, I will burn their ashes and blow it to the wind. That's what the messenger said. But he said, I can't teach you that. He said, you got to learn that on your own. He said, because we might have trouble ahead. And you might say, oh, I didn't know it was going to be like that. That's what the messenger told them. And when you go to the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, from that point on, Louis Farrakhan said, Malcolm X's tongue should be cut out his mouth and sent to the doorstep of the messenger. It was the messenger that told them, y'all just gonna sit around and let this hypocrite talk about me, because they wasn't doing nothing. Because like the messenger said, you better be careful. Because if they could, they would deceive the very elect. So the mere fact that so many brothers wasn't saying nothing showed that Malcolm was getting to him. They had that thought in their head, well, maybe the messenger really doing that. Maybe he do got teenage secretaries. Maybe he do got wives. So the messenger, he was around now. He put the fire on them brothers. So Louis Farrakhan, with all the rest of them, a lot of other brothers, started saying stuff that they really didn't mean. Farrakhan didn't mean that stuff he was saying about Malcolm. He loved Malcolm. He didn't want to say his tongue should be cut out of his mouth. He didn't want to say he was worthy of death. So in 1975, when Wallace took oath, when Wallace started saying that Malcolm was Farrakhan didn't buck him. He didn't say nothing. Because he got bit. Because he loved Malcolm. And Malcolm is a learning for Muslims. Because when the messenger used to write articles in the Muhammad Speaks, he said Malcolm's fall is an example for all hypocrites who make a mockery of Allah, his messenger, and his messages. Yes, the messenger never stopped. He kept the heat on Lewis and the rest of them brothers. Yes, so when the messenger saying that, because I love the history, I forgot to bring something. But after them Muslims jumped on Malcolm, they crushed Malcolm. The person who was Malcolm's next in command, he threatened the messenger to show you how the messenger different from this Islam today, because we be talking about that FBI stuff. Well, the FBI, you know, they was in the nation and we was infiltrated and them brothers, you know. So the brother who was with, they done put Malcolm's head in the paper. They said his tongue should be cut out. They got what Captain Elijah Muhammad Jr. had at FOI meeting. They got all that. So this person threatened the messenger. He said Elijah Muhammad will not make it to the end of the week. So Savior's Day came. Messenger had this person in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper with the brothers who was with him. It had at the top of him, they pictures, wanted. It had them brothers' name, they height, all the information they knew about them was in the paper. The messenger said, he said this person had the nerve to threaten me over the radio. He said, okay. He said, when we find you. That was the message. All this history is public. While we talking about, the FBI. I don't even like to listen to Wesley Muhammad or Farrakhan talk about this history. I'd rather read this hardcore, raw history myself. I'd rather read myself how them FOI in Los Angeles was waiting for that hypocrite at the airport. I'd rather read it myself. I'd rather read myself when 15 FOI caught 2 of Malcolm's people when they got done beating on them. Say they took them across the street and threw them against a steel fence. I'd rather read that myself. Sick of listening to Muslims talking about like we supposed to explain. He the messenger of God. God chose him. And to go on with this story, and I'll bring it. I just forgot. So the messenger put 3 brothers in the paper. Had wanted. Had their names, their height, their weight, all the information about them was in the paper. The two brothers that they had in the paper with this person saw their pictures in the paper. The next week, they contacted the Muhammad Speaks. Say, we ain't with him. We love the message. They let it know. We ain't with him at all. We love the message. They wrote a whole order saying, apologize to such and such and so and so. That's how the messenger got down. He said, when we find you, he said, we will entertain you. And it will be an entertainment that you will never forget. That's what the messenger told him. Right after they had Malcolm's head in the paper. Right after they had his sin, his tongue should be cut out. Then another thing about this new school nation of Islam. Them sisters get status with Louis Farrakhan. During the time of the messenger, Evelyn and Lucille was the only two sisters that had a name. Never did they talk about all these women like how they talking about the messenger had 25 children. Never did they talk about all of that. Evelyn and Lucille was the only two that they named. Other sisters, they said Malcolm tried to get them out of the temple to accuse the messenger, but they decided not to. Because if you read the paper, you get the play-by-play. They talk about how Malcolm used to come to Chicago or wherever these sisters was, talking to them and conversing with them, sending them letters, getting lawyers, trying to get them in court to accuse the messenger. When you read the paper, you get the play-by-play. So in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, they used to call them women prostitutes. They used to call them weak women. But when this hypocrite Louis Farrakhan came into power, he didn't believe that about them. He didn't believe that about Malcolm. So he is the one who be talking about the messenger had wives. Because when you look at the history with Malcolm, Malcolm never said they was wives. He said he is the father of their children. They wasn't talking. The argument in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper was not whether or not the messenger had wives. That never was the issue. The issue was him being the father of those children. Louis the hypocrite has changed the scenario. Right. He already said, yeah, he the father. It's just that Malcolm didn't know he had wives. They never talked about that. They even would go so far in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. They would talk about all the prophets and messengers. Because the Bible accuses Lot of having incest with his daughters. They accuse, I believe it was one of the prophets, Noah, of getting drunk. They accuse David, I believe, of Uriah's wife. They accuse this one of that and that one of this. But the messenger said that's all just being accused. Noah wasn't a drunk. Noah was chosen by God to be his mouthpiece to the people. Yes. Lot did not have incest with his daughters. Why would God save Lot if Lot was just as filthy and indecent as the people of Sodom and Gomorrah? Right. Why would God save Noah if Noah was just as filthy and indecent as the people who God destroyed? When God chooses a message, he chooses one from among the people. That's right. When the prophets saw the message, they saw a lamb in the midst of a wolf, in the midst of lions, a little meek lamb. Yes. And they said that this lamb was without spot or blemish. Meaning he's not some person who coming among the people, telling the people one thing but doing something else. And that's why Jesus told us. He said, beware of false prophets. Yes. Those who come in sheep clothing. He said, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. He said, you will know them by the fruit they bear. He said, no good tree bears evil fruit. That is impossible. It's impossible for the messenger to teach us how to be morally correct, to teach us to be so morally correct that other people notice. Other people notice us when we walking down the street. When the messenger had followers, his followers was not going to the Harlem hospital. The Harlem hospital doctor just saw them in the street. They saw them in the street and was, how could Elijah Muhammad have so many followers who was addicted to these drugs? We've been battling these conditions for years. We done went to school. We got PhD. We give them medicine, get them prescriptions, and they still relapse. But Elijah Muhammad gives them that divine solution. He gives hundreds of thousands of black people that divine solution that God came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. July 4th, 1930, gave the Honorable Elijah Muhammad the only divine prescription, the only divine solution for the black man. Well, brothers and sisters, we don't want to prolong the time. So I leave you as I came in the nation of Islam's greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum.
Enjoying the show? Help keep us on the air. 313-371-7033. That's 313-371-7033 to make a donation.
Brothers and sisters, we rise for prayer. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the beneficent, the merciful, sole master's day of judgment in which we now live. The alone do we serve, and the alone seek for thine help and aid. O Allah, please guide us on the right path of those upon whom thou bestow thy favors, not on the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray after they heard thy teachings. Say he, Allah is one God. Allah is he of whom nothing is independent, but upon whom we all depend. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, there is none like him. And I bear witness that none is to be served, worship to praise besides Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is thy true servant and last apostle. Ameen. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us not to do anything to anyone that we wouldn't have done it to ourselves, and treat everybody right, even the devil. Assalamu alaikum.
What the black man and woman needs to know about the nation, about the world, about themselves. Muhammad Speaks It. To order your 12-issue subscription to Muhammad Speaks newspaper, 313-371-7033. 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie is the grand champion of all bean pies. The rich flavor and smooth texture takes this pie to a whole new level of delicious. One bite and you'll understand why people all over the country call daily to order Kareem Bean Pie. 313-371-7033. That's 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie.
This bean pie is delicious.
Muhammad Speaks presents Messenger Elijah Muhammad's Teachings by Minister Khalil Shabazz every Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. at Muhammad's Temple of Islam, 12609 East McNichols Road in Detroit.